The last thing I ever expected when we bought our lake cabin was that a neighbor from the HOA would turn our peaceful retreat into a nightmare. It started with small disagreements, petty fines, unnecessary rules, and a tension that just kept building. But everything changed the day Karen, the HOA's most aggressive and controlling member, crossed a line nobody could have imagined. That day, my wife and Grandpa were shot. The shock of that moment is something I still can't shake. What makes this story even more unbelievable is that Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. I'm not just a cabin owner. I'm the commander of a SWAT team. The irony is thick. Here I was, trying to enjoy some quiet time with family, and instead I was pulled back into a world of tactics, strategy, and danger. The people I love were hurt, and my entire life changed in an instant. But the story isn't as simple as it sounds. This isn't just about a neighborhood dispute gone wrong. It's about power, secrets, and a fight that's only just begun. Karen's actions unleashed something much bigger, and now, with my experience and determination, I'm ready to face whatever comes next. The tension in this community has been simmering for years, and finally, it boiled over in the worst possible way. What happened after that shooting? How did I handle the situation when the stakes were this high? And what does Karen's shocking mistake mean for all of us? Stay with me, because this story is far from over, and the next part will reveal truths that will blow your mind. Before everything exploded that day, life at the lake cabin felt like an escape-a quiet place where my wife, Grandpa, and I could disconnect from the chaos of everyday life. The cabin was our sanctuary, nestled among tall pines and calm water, a spot where we built memories and shared stories. But beneath that calm surface, tensions with the HOA had been simmering for months. Karen, the self-appointed enforcer of every rule, was always watching, always ready to pounce on any perceived slight at first. It was little things, complaints about noise, parking, even the way we maintained our property. But those small conflicts quickly spiraled into something darker. Karen seemed obsessed with control, and no matter how reasonable we tried to be, she found ways to escalate the situation. My grandpa, a quiet man who'd seen his share of trouble but never got involved in drama, was especially frustrated. My wife tried to keep peace, but even she was growing tired of the constant tension. What most people didn't know was the life I lived outside the cabin. As a SWAT commander, I was trained for high-pressure situations, crisis management, and keeping people safe in moments of extreme danger. But here, at the lake, I wanted none of that. I wanted peace. Instead, I was forced to confront a new kind of threat, one that came from right next door, from a person who underestimated exactly who they were messing with. Karen's aggression wasn't just about rules or power, it felt personal, like a challenge. And when things finally exploded, it was clear that this was only the beginning. The shooting wasn't a random act. It was the tipping point in a much larger conflict. I knew I had to protect my family, but how far would this go? What secrets did Karen hide behind that angry, controlling exterior? And what would happen when my past and present collided in ways I never expected? The answers were out there, but finding them wouldn't be easy. After that terrible day, the cabin felt different. Like the walls themselves held a weight we couldn't shake off. My wife was recovering slowly, and Grandpa tried to stay strong. But I could see the fear lingering in their eyes. It wasn't just the physical wounds. It was the shock of betrayal by someone we thought was just a difficult neighbor. But Karen, she acted like nothing happened, like her actions were justified. That only made things worse. The HOA meetings became a battlefield. Karen used every chance to twist the story, painting herself as the victim while pushing new rules, designed to make life harder for us. It wasn't just about the shooting anymore. It was about control and revenge. I could see how some neighbors were starting to take sides, quietly watching, whispering. The community was fracturing, and the peaceful place we once loved was turning into a war zone. What bothered me the most was how blind some people were to the real danger. They saw Karen as just another strict HOA member, not the threat she had become. And while I was trained to handle high-risk situations, I couldn't just storm in with my SWAT team. Here it was my home, my family, and the lines were blurred. I had to be careful, strategic. There were whispers about her past, two things nobody talked about openly, but they added pieces to the puzzle of who she really was. Meanwhile, my wife was struggling with the trauma, trying to heal while dealing with the fear of what might come next. Grandpa, usually so calm, was restless, pushing me to take action, but knowing it wouldn't be simple. Every phone call, every knock at the door, felt like the calm before another storm. I knew Karen wasn't finished, and whatever her next move was, it would force me to step deeper into a fight I never wanted but couldn't avoid. The tension in the air was thick, and I kept asking myself, how far would this go? And how much more would we lose before it was over? The answers were still out there, hidden beneath layers of lies and old grudges, waiting to surface. But I wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not ever. It was supposed to be a normal weekend visit. My parents were finally coming over to see our new house. And after weeks of unpacking and trying to settle in, I was actually excited. The weather was perfect, the grill was ready, and my little sister even baked cookies. Everything felt peaceful until she showed up. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. We'd heard stories from neighbors about her constant complaints: trash bins left out 5 minutes too long, lawns not trimmed to her liking, even Halloween decorations being too scary. But we didn't expect her to target us on day one. As soon as my dad's SUV pulled into my driveway, she came stomping down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, like she was about to interrogate someone on national security. She didn't bother with introductions. "You can't park here," she snapped, arms crossed. My mom blinked. "But this is their driveway." That's when Karen's tone shifted from annoyed to full-on hostile. "This is an HOA-regulated neighborhood. You need authorization for multiple cars. I'm calling the police." And just like that, she dialed 911. Now, we're not the kind of people to cause scenes. But watching her pace in the street, reporting our license plates like we were criminals, my dad stayed quiet. A little too quiet. What Karen didn't know, what made this all so ironic, was that my dad is actually the state's governor. Not some political big shot throwing his weight around, just a calm, level-headed man who believes in letting people reveal who they are. So we stood there, waiting for the cops to arrive. Karen looked so confident, so certain she'd won. But I saw the look on my dad's face. He wasn't angry. He was just ... ready? And what happened next? Well, let's just say Karen had no idea what she'd just started. The sound of sirens echoed faintly in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Karen stood proudly at the edge of our lawn, arms folded like she was the one keeping the peace in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, my dad leaned against the hood of his SUV, unfazed. My mom kept glancing at him, waiting to see if he'd step in, but he didn't. Not yet. I could feel the tension building in the air. My younger sister clutched the cookie tray tighter, like she wasn't sure if we were still going to have a peaceful family afternoon, or if things were about to completely fall apart. The neighbors started to peek out their windows, a few even stepping out onto their porches. It was like the entire block knew something big was about to happen, and no one wanted to miss it. What made it all more strange was that Karen had no clue who she was messing with. She hadn't asked for names or introduced herself. She just saw a family she didn't recognize and assumed we didn't belong. That was her pattern, apparently. One neighbor later told us she'd done the same thing to a military family that had just moved in 2 streets down. The real kicker: we'd only been in the neighborhood for 6 days. 6 days we hadn't even gotten a chance to meet most of the other residents, let alone learn the so-called rules Karen seemed to make up on the spot. But the way she talked, you'd think she ran the entire town. My dad kept his cool though. No raised voice. No dramatic gestures. He just stood there, waiting. He didn't want special treatment. He wanted her to treat us like humans first. The cruiser finally rolled up the street and Karen turned, waving both hands like she'd summoned help herself. But she was about to find out this was far from over.